Okay, so we finished the fourth day and the fifth day. And now we're going to go on to day 6. Verse 24. And God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kind, cattle and creeping things, and the beasts of the earth according to their kind. And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth according to their kind, and the cattle according to their kind, and all the creeping things of the ground according to their kind. And God saw that it was good. So 24 and 25 seem to be almost repeating. 24 is that the earth bring forth these living creatures, and then I guess then God makes them according to their kind. I don't know. So does that mean so there's the general families of animals, and then each one, like each species, what is it? So that in scientific terms, like there's like the there's mammals, right? And there's reptiles, there's insects, and then so those are like the gigantic families of animals. That's according to their kind, and then it says according to their kind, according to their kind. So then you separate all the way down to like the independent species within the great family groups. I don't know exactly if that's what's going on, but it seems to be an interesting idea that I just came up with just now. And if you think about, like, if you were like to all of a sudden, like, just like say, like, walk up to, like, you never seen a, like, I don't know, a rhinoceros for the first time, right? You just like, I mean, how do you even know it's a rhinoceros? Is, like, where does all these names come from? Of course, we're going to get into that very soon. But like, let's say you know what a rhino is, you Googled it and you've seen a picture of it, or sometime in elementary school or preschool, somebody showed you a picture and said, this is a rhinoceros. And you're like, okay, so it's like a gray animal, it's 4 legs, kind of big, looks kind of gigantic, and it has a horn, one horn. And then it's like, okay, it lives, generally speaking, in Africa. Like, you learn all these things about rhinoceros, but imagine, like, you've never seen that, like, you didn't know any of that, and you just came up to this animal for the first time. Now it looks like it came from the ground. I mean, like, if you look at a rhinoceros, if you look at like crawling animals or animals that are on 4 legs, or even 2-legged animals, or they seem like they're attached to the ground. Like, have you ever seen a rhinoceros fly? Or like, I mean, there's obviously some animals can jump. You can see a lion could jump, or leopards could jump, but in general they look kind of like land animals. That's what we call them. Like, some of them we actually call them land animals. Look like they're on the ground, but even animals that come out from the ground, from the sea, like, let's say amphibians, like crocodiles, alligators. Are there other animals that live both in the land and in the water? Okay, so a lot of reptiles are amphibians, like frogs come in and right. Frogs are amphibious, meaning they both live in the land and on the water. Turtles, right? There's other ones that I could think of that live on, that are reptiles, and then there's birds that live in the water, can go into the water and also onto the land, like penguins, etc. But if you look at them in general, they kind of look like they're kind of stuck from the land. Like, they sort of look, So when it's saying from the land, like, actually what you're saying, but Daniel, that's kind of crazy. Like, the Bible, God is telling us, telling humanity that, like, animals is sprouted from the ground. I'm saying from our perspective, like, not knowing anything about biology, not knowing anything about, like, ecology, or how animals reproduce. If you were to see an animal or a living thing for the first time, it kind of would, even a bird, like, in a way, it's sort of like, well, okay, you see this thing flying around the air, like, but then you see it landing on the ground. Eventually, every bird has to actually land on the ground or land on a tree. It can't stay up in the air forever. It seems that there is some sort of element of the ground to them. Okay, so the ground is very important. So, okay, so that's what I don't want to get into, this whole thing about the beasts of the earth. Okay, now we're going to get to everybody's favorite verse, verse 26. And God said, let us. And now it does say, Vayomer Elohim Natase Adam Betzelomenu. It does use the word us, and this is a huge deal. This is not a small deal. This is not a small word. The fact that he uses us. Everybody talks about this. Everybody has an opinion about this. It's extremely important. Let us make man in our image, and after our likeness, and they shall rule over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the heaven, and over the animals, and all over the earth, and all over creeping things that creeps upon the earth. And God, so first it says V'yomer Elohim, not Yud Kei Vav Kei. As I mentioned, there's Elohim and there's Yud Kei Vav Kei. So Elohim, again, is commonly within Dati Shomer Shabbat, and maybe other streams of Judaism, Elohim is understood as the God of like strict justice or judgment, or like judge, because Elohim also could mean judge or judgment, judges. So when you make a judgment, you're basing yourself on facts. So Elohim is often connected to the laws of nature. Let's just call it that way. In a way, I'm not saying that God is, according to Judaism, God is above nature. God created nature. And so who's God speaking to? So it says God said, let us. So who's us? Who's God speaking to? Who was us? Because again, Judaism says very clearly that we're a monotheistic religion. We believe in one Hashem, the Hashem Echad. We don't believe in multiple gods. We don't have this concept at all. But who is the us? So, and even Moses Rabbeinu said to God, hey, don't put us in the Torah. Don't do that. It's going to raise all these questions. And Rashi, everybody in Judaism, every commentator notices this. You can't ignore it. It's not a mistranslation. It's not something, like that. And why would a later editor why would a later group of editors who are monotheistics and who believe in Hashem, why would they want to create this controversy? Like if I'm an editor, or if I'm in a group of editors and we're all monotheists and we're all we're like the Dead Sea Scroll type people, or we're even before the Dead Sea Scroll type people, and we all believe in the Masorah that God created the world, and that we're all in this group of people that are the Hebrew nation, and let's say we're the ones writing the Torah, as many people claim, and we're in this JEPD group, right? We're these like editors of the Torah. We wouldn't use the word us. We wouldn't say, let us make man in our image, because we know that would cause all kinds of questions. We would take this out of the Torah. We would say, we wouldn't write it this way. We would not write this verse. If we were editing the Torah and we were monotheistic people, we would not write this sentence this way. So why would anybody do this? Why would there's all this, theory, or this whole school of thought that the Bible was written by human beings, right? There's JEP and D. It's extremely famous. The documentary hypothesis, I actually studied it in university. It took a whole year of it. I know people study it for more than a year, and for 20, 30 years or more, and they're really into it, and it's a whole belief system, or say educational system, or it's a whole approach to how to understand the Torah, that the Torah is written as a piece of literature, and we can compare it to like the Gilgamesh and all these other things that were written around, maybe 4,500, 4,000 years ago. And we have to see that the Torah is connected to the Hammurabi codes and all these other things. Okay, so I'm not ignorant of any of that. All right, I'm not saying I know. I'm not an expert in the Hammurabi codes, and I'm not an expert necessarily ancient Middle East history. Although I did take a class in university that was also called Ancient Middle East history. So I did actually take a class in this. Again, it's only one class, and obviously people become professors of ancient Middle East history. So there's people with a lot more, expertise in the ancient Middle East than I have. But I did, study it, and I do have some knowledge about like what people say about it, because I, did learn the documentary hypothesis. Now Dati Jews, Dati Shomer Shabbat. I don't like to use the word Orthodox. I try to like eliminate that word from my vocabulary. But like Dati Shomer Shabbat, Orthodox Jews, and maybe other movements in Judaism, they're not necessarily into this, and some of them are completely against this idea, right? You can never have that, you can never say that the Bible was written by anybody other than Moses Rabbeinu, right? According to most streams within Orthodox Judaism, I think almost all of them, all the different sects of Orthodox Judaism, all the different Hasidim, and all the Litvaks, and all the Mizrahim, and all the people from Yemen, all the Jews who keep Shabbat and keep Torah and try to keep Torah and try to keep Shabbat, try to keep the mitzvahs as best as they understand them. None of them ever would ever be into this documentary hypothesis. They would never. They might know about it. They might have read about it. They might have been exposed to it, and maybe in high school or in university if they went to university. But bottom line, they don't believe in it. They just don't believe in it. So we're talking about good 30 to 40% of Jews in the world do not believe in the documentary hypothesis, and in general, our Masorah absolutely doesn't believe in it. The Jewish Masorah absolutely does not believe in it, but they are aware of it. They are aware that this question comes up: who is this us? Like who? So like I'm making almost an entire video just on one sentence, not even a complete sentence. I didn't even talk about the other part of the verse 26. Just one verse in the Torah could take up, thousands of hours of discussion, theological questions, real questions, like serious questions as to why would anybody put this into the Torah? Like, why would God do this? First of all, why would God do it? Why would God tell Moses to do it? Moses himself supposedly asked that question according to our Masorah. So first of all, that's question number. I mean, why would God tell Moses to write this? If Moses wrote, if we are saying that Moses wrote the Bible, why would Moses do it? Now, if we're in the school of camp and we're in this camp that says, no, there's documentary hypothesis, there's J, E, P, and D, and it was written much later, and it was, re-edited, and it was, created by human beings, 100, just to give this narrative of why Yeshua ben Nun conquered Eretz Israel, to create this narrative of the Davidic, kingdom. Like, I'm very, very aware of the school of thought. So why would those people write in God and let us make man in our image? Like, why would they put that? They would not use the word us. They wouldn't say, and God said, let us make man in our image. They wouldn't say that sentence. They wouldn't say those words at all. They would say something else in Hebrew. Or whatever language that they spoke or wrote it in, ancient Hebrew, ancient Aramaic, whatever language, or ancient Greek, if you want to claim that. I don't know, cuneiform, whatever language you think that they wrote and spoke in the Middle East at that time period, they wouldn't put this sentence in there. They just wouldn't, because they know it causes problem. They would cause this question that would come to everybody's mind. What do you mean us? What do you mean our image? What did God has? God has an image? What does that? That's another question that we're going to get into. Like, what does it mean that God has let us make man in our image? What if God has an image? And after our likeness, again, plural, and they shall rule. And wait a minute. It says, Vayomer Elohim na'aseh Adam. And then it says, and they shall rule over. But wait a minute. I thought Adam was one person. Adam, I thought it was Adam Rishon. Like we always say Adam Rishon and Chava, right? Which we haven't even gotten into that yet. We haven't even gotten into that. Here we're saying Adam. And then it says, and then it uses the word plural, and they shall rule over. Who's they? Who? I thought God only made Adam. I thought God made Adam alone, right? So wait a minute. Who's they? Who's going to rule over all the animals and all, who's going to rule over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the heaven and over the animals and all over the earth and all the creeping things that creep upon the earth? Who is they? If God only made one person, which, doesn't, who's they? So we have to be, so, Adam, almost any Dati person you run into in Beit Knesset would say, any one of them be like, oh yeah, it was Adam and Chava, it was like, and Adam fell asleep, and according to the Torah, Adam was put to sleep, and Chava was split from him, from his rib or from his side. We're going to get into that later if I ever get to those verses. And then, they had a son, they had Cain, like almost anybody, almost any 4 or 5-year-old, 6-year-old kid in any Beit Knesset, in any Dati world knows these verses, knows the story of Adam Rishon, right? But they're not, are they really? I mean, maybe they're not really reading it, like, they aren't reading it as an adult, obviously, because they're 4, 5, 6 years old. But even the adult that's teaching them how to read it isn't necessarily getting into the kishkas of this question of what's going on just in this one sentence. This in verse 26, just one verse in the Torah has so much astronomical implications, not just for Judaism, by the way, but also other religions, because 2 other religions come from Judaism, Christianity and Islam. Okay. So Islam is very, 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 very connected to Judaism, and so is Christianity in many ways. So I'm not going to get into those 2 religions, but I will. They say that they're connected to us, and we say they're connected to us. So that's already a billion. Each one of those religions is 1 billion people. So that's 2 billion people plus the Jews. So almost at half the world's population seems to say that there is some connection to each other and to these verses and to the Bible itself. Although each one of those religions has their own understanding and interpretation that suits their theological belief system, which is totally fine and acceptable. And we shouldn't judge anybody. And that's not what the point of this video is. The point of this video, as you can see, is that even one verse, even one few sentences in the Torah, I could come up with a giant tirade and rant and long video on it. So I'm going to end there because this is a long video, and I do actually want to get into verse 27 and verse 28, and I want to continue, but those apparently need to be separate videos. See you soon.